Sunday, October 16th, 2021, and we found some treasures yesterday, my dad and I. This is a mushroom. It's hen of the woods, Grifola Frondosa. It's a polypore mushroom. They come up in the fall. When the nights start getting cool, you're getting some moisture in the ground from rains, and the nights turn cool, they start popping up. They grow off of around the base of hardwood trees, and they can grow out 10, 15, 20 feet. Usually the larger the tree, the better. The most common tree we find these around are oak trees. Also, we find them around beech trees and I just lost my train of thought. We find them around beech trees and hickory trees, but most commonly you'll find them around large old oak trees. Like most mushrooms, they feed off of carbohydrates. Well, the carbohydrates that these feed off of is dying or decaying wood below the ground. Around oak trees, again, the old large oak trees, you'll see some dead limbs in the trees. Sometimes they rot through the middle, but you start getting root systems that are dying. You got good live root systems, you got old root systems that are dying off. Well, when those start dying, the mushrooms feed off of that, and they decompose the wood. If you find a hen of the woods around a large old oak tree, they'll continue to grow there for years. I've seen them grow on stumps until, in small log woods, once they start growing around a stump, their spores take, and they're growing well. They'll come up there every year. I've seen them come up until the stump is completely gone, and they'll get smaller at that point. These can get up to 100 pounds. I've never found a 100-pounder personally, but the books I've read and the information I have, they can get up to 100 pounds. The biggest one I probably found is 30, 40 pounds. This one here, that's about 20 pounds, 15 to 20 pounds. This is a nice one, nice and fresh. Now, they'll be in different, you can find them in different colors. This one's very nice, dark, kind of a chocolate brown. You can find them very light, like a tan color. All depends on the tree they're growing around, depends a lot on the weather. All of them are choice edibles. They're very tasty. They, in my opinion, they have a very light, a nutty flavor, almost a sweet nutty flavor. We like to either saute them in butter or get an egg and beer wash and dip them and coat them in your favorite breading. We make our own breading. And then deep fry them. Very, very tasty. Also, these are very good putting over roasts, any type of roast. Just pile them on your roasts and just incredible flavor. What we're going to do today, though, because we found so many, this is just one of what we found. We're going to can a bunch. So whether you're canning or whether you're deep frying, no matter what you're going to do, it's nice to find them nice clean. Usually these will typically pull up off the ground. This is such a young and fresh one. I took a knife and I cut it. You can see where I cut it, where it's coming out of the ground. Now, some of them, when you find them, if they come up in sandy soil, or if they come up in real fine, loamy soil, depending on where they're at. This came up in somebody's yard, so there was grass around it. It's nice and clean. Usually you don't find them this clean. But you might get some sand on there. You might get some loamy soil, some weeds. As you cut these, just rinse them off. Some people like to soak them in salt water to get the bugs out. Because as these get older, not only do we like to eat them, the insects like to eat them too. You'll get all kinds of bugs crawling around in them. So it's probably a good idea to soak them in salt water, gets the bugs out. When they're this fresh, I don't like soaking them. But I'm going to cut them up. I'm going to put in this tote because we are going to can them today. So what you want to do when you get one, you don't want to tip it upside downward from the bottom down, because then as you're cutting, any dirt, any debris that's on the bottom is going to fall through and you're just going to get everything a mess. What I like to do is start on an edge. As you can see, we started here last night after we got it, and we fried some up. So you just want to start on a side somewhere, and you want to start working your way in. And you just want to take a knife and you just kind of pull down. You can break some of it away, just like this. As you can see, We'll take the knife here and kind of cut that away. And see, there's some that's dirty there, but you can see it very meaty. This is all good. The whole mushroom is good. You can see how meaty it is right here. Very meaty. What you want to do is cut them about a 1/2 inch thick. So you got, whether you're going to bread it or cook it, you got some meat there. Now, the fronds that come out of the top are much thinner, but there they are. Now they're called polypores because they don't have gills like a regular mushroom. They look like a sponge underneath if you look at it close. There's many, many, many pores, millions of pores. And what they do as they get older, they'll drop the spores out of those pores. And as the wind blows and the rains come and everything, those spores get carried away and hopefully land in a climate where, and a location where their food source and the conditions are all good, where another one will start growing. This, like any mushroom, this is the fruit of the mushroom. The organism itself is underground. It's feeding off the dying root systems, the dying wood. When the conditions are right, the temperature, the moisture, and the humidity are right, this will come up virtually overnight. They'll come up overnight, but usually it takes them a couple of days to fully open up and mature. Once they open up, this is the fruit. This is the apple of the fungus, or the cherry, or the peach. This is the fruit. This is the reproductive part. And these pores, as they drop the spores, those are like the seeds. Those are what's coming out. So this is the fruit. We're harvesting the fruit of the fungus. So what we're going to do, we're going to take these and we're just going to cut them. And they're, once you get into it, it's not hard. But you can see you'll have pieces here, and just take your knife, cut sideways, cut through them. Give yourself some nice thick pieces. I like to try to cut them flat so that they're easy to bread. But chunks, that's a nice chunk there. Well, I broke that off, but see, nice chunks like this. Nice big pieces to eat. And you just start working your way along the mushroom. But see, now we're getting into a little bit of dirt and debris. So what we will do is we'll take them, we'll set that off the side. They will get rinsed and soaked a little bit. The really clean stuff I'm just putting in this tote. And then once we're done doing this, we'll come back and we will start canning these. See, there's a nice one. Now, when you got a frond coming this way and one this way, they get kind of hard to bread. So just take your knife and just cut it like that. So you got pieces. That one's got a little bit of debris on it and dirt. So we'll get another tote or a bowl. We'll rinse those. And we're going to keep the dirty stuff away. See, you don't see any bugs. Now, if you find one that's a little bit older, maybe a day or two older, and you bring it in, so you're going to get earwigs, stink bugs, all kinds of stuff like to eat these. Sometimes slugs. There's all kinds of things that will get into these, but that's why you want to soak them in salt water. So we're just going to continue breaking this apart, cutting away. This is where it was in the ground. We'll pull that away so we can rinse it. If it's really dirty, it doesn't rinse off good, then we'll just throw that part away. But and if you got an old oak tree, a big old oak tree, a hickory, a beech, it doesn't matter. Don't just pitch those in the garbage or give them to the chickens or something. Put them around your trees because they're going to drop spores. If I threw that out, spores are still going to continue to drop out of this. So put them around a tree. You might have some someday. So there's a nice piece, got a little bit of dirt on it. We'll rinse those. Here's a nice one here. Nice white meat. Just pull that apart, put them in there. And I'm going to continue doing this, and as you find pieces, nice pieces, just cut them with your knife. You see this one's got a couple, because they grow in layers, kind of like a cauliflower. That's a nice chunk right there, but you can actually go in between that. You can cut it. See how nice and white that meat is there? They're very Very good. What I did is I took a fillet knife and I just went down the center, down the middle of this. I wanted you to see what they look like from the inside. So you've got main stems that come up and then these fronds come off of them. Now what I did after I cut it, then I'll cut it in sections like this. You can see it's like a network how they just grow up. Cut them, like I said, about a 1/2 inch thick. Just cut them in a section like this. Like I said, these outer ones, they'll come off, but if you cut them in a section like this, now you've got that dirty part at the bottom. You can just trim that off very easily. See, you're going to get some dirt in there. That's the ones we're going to rinse. We'll trim just a little bit more off. Now we've got a nice clean section of mushroom. Nice and meaty. Now you can start just cutting sections off. Nice little chunks, pieces. What I like to do, I like these big meaty parts. Sometimes I'll just take and cut it like this in the real meaty stuff. And then these make really nice snacks right here when you deep fry them. Or you put them in a roaster. So we'll cut them like this. See, you got a piece breaking there. Just kind of go with it. There's no perfect way to do this. So now you got a nice piece there. Same thing. You can cut it any way you want. I'm going to take and cut another slice out here on the nice meaty part. Just split them up. You can leave it like this. Cut another one off the base. Some nice pieces, and then this will break apart. There's a nice piece. Okay, this one is kind of thick. We don't mind that, but if you get a little thick, just set it up on its end. Cut down through it. Now you got two really nice pieces. And then you put those in your egg wash and just roll them in your favorite breading. It tastes really good. And you don't want to batter. Prefer not to use batter for these. These are very light, delicate. Like I said, a nutty, almost sweet, nutty flavor. If you use a spicy breading, you're not going to get the full impact of the mushroom. You want to taste the mushroom. So the breading we use, it's 4 parts flour, cornmeal, ground up cornflakes, and ground up saltines. We don't add any seasoning to it. We grind that up, mix it all together, do our egg wash, and then we bread it. Throw it in the deep fryer. If someone wants salt and pepper, they can add that afterwards. We did a little experiment the other night. We tried 3 different kinds of breading. All of them were way too salty. Some of them were just, the seasonings were overpowering the mushroom itself. So you can always add salt or seasoning. You can't take it out. So I recommend using a very light breading. You can dredge them in flour, but I like the crispy texture of the breading we use. Again, that was 4 equal parts of flour, cornmeal, ground cornflakes, and ground saltine crackers. When I say ground, we just put them in the Vitamix and we pulse it until they're not powdery. You know, you want a little bit of granules in there. You mix that in with your flour and your cornmeal, and it's just a perfect balance, and it's nice and crispy. And the other thing is, you let these get cold overnight, and they're still good the next day. So what we're doing, again, we're canning these so that we can take them out and bread them later. You can dehydrate these. It takes up a lot more room, and if you say you want to use them, make sure you take them out 24 hours before you want to use them. Put them in a bowl of water or milk in the fridge, and they'll reconstitute. But we want to do this way because you also have broth then when you pressure cook these or can them. You're going to have broth to use on them, and you're not going to have the hassle of reconstituting. And you just take them out, you pat them off, and you still do your egg wash and your breading. It's no difference. So these hold up really well to heat and cooking. They keep their texture, so there's not going to be any issues. So like here's a little piece I don't want on there. But to finish this one off, here's a nice chunk right here. So what we'll do, that's a nice one there. But I think I'm going to slice this one in two. That's nice. Good for this time of year, football season or whatever you're doing. If you're having a fish fry, love to break these out and add them in because you got your breading and your deep fryer running already. That's a nice one there. We'll just leave that whole. These are going to fall apart a little bit when we cook them. Take that out. Cut them into nice chunks. Now this one's kind of got a lot of gaps in it, so again, we'll take our knife, 2 pieces, and we're going to continue doing this until we finish this up. We got our swamis all cut up, nice pieces like we told you, you know, different sizes here. We got some hot water here. We're going to put these in the hot water, cover them, bring them to a boil, and we're going to boil them for 5 minutes. At that point, we will put them in the jars, and then we're going to pressure can them. So, we just got them all in here. All these delicious swami. And we're just going to put them all in here like this. Just fill this pan. Stainless steel, don't use aluminum. Use stainless steel. Don't want any chemical reactions or taint the taste of the mushrooms with the aluminum. So use a stainless steel pot. Probably going to have to do 2 batches. We might get it all in here, we'll see. Now we'll cover this with hot water. Bring it to a boil. We're going to boil it for 5 minutes. Okay, brought this to a boil. 5 minutes. Smells delicious. Just nothing like the smell of swami. Now we got our jars. We're just going to fill our jars up. 1 inch to the top. You need 1 inch headspace. We're going to be pressure cooking these. So I got a slotted spoon here. We'll get our mushrooms in first, shake them down, then we'll put our juice on top. They go in. They're limber now because they've been cooked for 5 minutes, so they're not stiff like they were before, so they go in fairly easy. More in there. Push them down a little bit. Give it a generous 1 inch, just like that. And then we'll pour our juice in. We don't want to discard this juice and use hot water because there's a lot of flavor in that water. So we're going to leave it just the way it is. As you can see here, what you want to do is take a rubber spatula. I like to use just a regular butter knife. Run it down the edges and just give it a little squeeze. If there's any air bubbles, they'll come up to the top. That's it. We'll set that off to the side. Then we get them all done. We'll put our lids on it. And then we will put it in the pressure canner. Got our jars here. We got them all in. We got 15 quarts mushrooms. Actually, 16. This one wasn't full. We just filled it with broth, and we got 2 broth because this juice makes really nice broth. We'll can the rest of the broth and pressure can that too. So now we're just going to put a teaspoon of salt into each one, put our lids and bands on, and we're going to pressure cook it. You can put your salt in. Before you fill your jars, you can put it in. after you fill. It doesn't really matter. As it cooks, that salt's going to dissolve and go all through this. Doesn't matter where you put it. Put our bands right on. The reason you want a 1-inch headspace when you're pressure canning is you're getting up to 240 degrees. The air is going to expand in this and cook out. Everything's going to expand a little bit, so you got to have extra room or it's going to cook out the top. Sometimes you'll still get a little bit of juice bleeding through the lid, but then it'll seal down as it cools. So you want an inch of headspace anytime you are pressure canning. Whether it's mushrooms or meat or beans or corn, always give yourself 1 inch of headspace. If you've got a rim that's bent up, just take your fingers and go around it, push it back down. Now when you're pressure canning, it's not like a hot water bath. You're only going to put about an inch and a half of water in the bottom of your pressure canner. You do not fill it up with water. That 1 inch of water at the bottom will create steam. It's going to superheat everything. The reason we're pressure canning this and not doing a hot water bath, this is a low or no acid product. There's no acidity to mushrooms. The same as you would have if you were cold packing meat or vegetables like green beans or corn. There's no acidity. Without acidity, the botulinum bacteria can thrive in this environment. Botulinum bacteria thrives in an anaerobic environment, meaning no air and no acidity. It's a perfect environment if you happen to have the botulism bacteria in your product. 212 degrees, which is boiling temperature, will not kill botulinum bacteria. 240 degrees will. So we're going to do this for 90 minutes because we want to make sure we get each jar up to 240 degrees all the way to the center. If there happens to be botulinum bacteria in there, it will kill that. You will not have to worry about it. So we got them all on there. Now what we're going to do, we're simply, just like anything else we can, just finger tight. The reason we don't want to cinch down on these is, if you really crank down on these, as I said, these are going to expand because of the high heat. These lids are designed to raise up just a little bit. That'll let that extra pressure come out. And then as they cool, they'll seal back down. They'll lay down and seal. If you crank these down tight, it does not allow the lid to raise up. And what will happen, there's enough pressure in there. One of two things is going to happen. If you've got a defect in your jar, the jar's going to bust open. If the jar's good, your lid is going to heave up and you're going to get little creases in your lid where it heaved up. And those creases are potential leak points. You could get little pinholes in there and that will let air in and your product will spoil. So as you can see, I'm just letting my fingers, just enough pressure that I'm tightening it down, and then when my fingers are slipping, that's it. Not much of a grip at all. Just enough where I can feel that. That's all you got to do. This rim's really bent. We don't want that. We don't want these bent rims. Now we're going to put them in our pressure canner. Again, we only got about an inch and a half of water in there. This particular pressure canner will do 18 quarts at a time, and that's the reason we're using it. Your standard size canner can do about 9 quarts at a time. This will do double that amount. So you can do twice as many in the same amount of time. It's a lot more expensive, but as far as I'm concerned, if you do a lot of canning like we do, it is worth every penny of it. Because you're doing, once you get this up to temperature, 90 minutes, and then you're going to let it cool back down, you're doing twice as many. So there's 8. I actually can do 17. Space your jars out so they're not touching each other, because they might rattle a little bit in there. If they do, and they click against each other, you could have breakage. Then you put your other rack on right on top of them. Same thing. Your jar in the center. Put them across from each other. Balance them out. Put our lid on. This is an American canner, pressure canner. So we're going to tighten this down now. When you do this, this is what's called a metal-to-metal seal on these American pressure canners. There's no rubber. So it's critical that you get this even all the way around. What I mean by even is there's a gap all the way around here. You can see this gap. You can see it's tighter there. It's wider here. So what you do is you start bringing one side down. You just bring those down till they touch. And then you step back and you take a look. Okay, we still have a much more narrow gap on this side end here. So we're going to loosen those up a little bit. We're going to draw these back down over here a little bit more. We'll take a look at it. Now it's starting to look pretty good. We'll bring it up a little bit more on that end. That means we take this side down just a little bit. Now if we look, we've got an even gap all the way around. Once you've got an even gap all the way around, you snug these down, and now you tighten them up across from each other. Give it a turn. Come across, give it a turn. Across here, give it a turn. Nice even pressure all the way around. Do it again. And you'll have a tight seal. Now, this is your weight. You have 5, 10, and 15 pounds. Always look at your canning book, whatever you're canning, and find out. We're in Ohio. We're at sea level. At sea level, you want 10 pounds of pressure. So you put it on the 10, and that would go right here. Okay, if you're above, so many feet above sea level, there's less air, less pressure. You've got to go up to 15 pounds. But we're here in Ohio, so check your canning book, your directions, and find out where you're at in the country. If you're above sea level, then you want to look at that. But typically, you're going to use 10 pounds. Now, you don't want to put this on there until steam starts coming out. It's called venting. What you can do potentially, if you put that on there now, you can get pressure starting building up, but you can get technically a cold spot in here. So we leave this open until you see steam coming out. Then you know the cold air pocket is gone and everything's at even temperature. So we're going to leave this off. We're going to crank our heat up just a little bit, get her going, and as soon as we start seeing steam, and you don't want to do this to check for steam. It'll burn you real quick. You can take a piece of paper, you can look at it. If you can't see it, take a piece of paper and put it over. You'll see that paper will come right up. You'll see it get wet. Right now there's nothing coming out. because it's got to heat up. So once that starts blowing steam out, we'll put that on at 10 pounds of pressure. Once that starts sputtering a little bit, jiggling, that's called a jiggle valve. The steam, you'll also has a backup. You'll see you've actually got a pressure gauge here. You'll see once it gets up to about 10, this particular one will go just above 10 pounds, and then this will start sputtering because it's not allowing the pressure to go any higher than 10 pounds. That's why this weight is set at 10 pounds. If it gets higher, it gets 11, 12 pounds, that'll start, you can hear it a little bit. The pressure's starting to build. But this is not going to allow your pressure to get over 10 pounds. If you got it at 15 pounds, it will not allow your pressure to go over 15 pounds. These also have a safety valve. I believe, it's been a while since I checked, I believe this safety valve, it's a rubber grommet, it will pop. I think it's just a couple pounds over 15 pounds. I don't remember exactly what it was. You can look in the book. But anyways, the reason for that is if something happened here, let's say a jar broke or something, some product, some food or something, plug this valve up, this thing becomes a bomb. This thing will explode. The pressure will just keep building and building until it blows up. This rubber grommet prevents that from happening. The old ones didn't have that, and you'll probably hear old stories from your grandmother, great-grandmother of these things putting holes in the ceiling. That will not happen because they have these safety grommets here. It's a rubber grommet. It cannot, this will go before this thing does. So they're perfectly safe. We've got 3 different sides of these. We use them for cooking, we use them for canning. They're perfectly safe. So once this gets up to steam, we'll put this on. When it starts jiggling, then you'll back your temperature up. You don't need full blast high heat once it gets going. Once that starts jiggling, you turn your heat down to low to medium low. And then you start, once that's jiggling is when you start timing it. Do not start timing this until you're up to 10 pounds of pressure or 15 pounds, depending on your geographical area. So we're going to wait. When the steam starts coming out, we'll put that on, let our pressure build, and then we're going to time it for 90 minutes.